Coming up next on Roland Martin Unfiltered, more protesters arrested at the hearing for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, and senators get into it with him as well over issues like Roe v. Wade. Tyler Perry puts up $200,000 for information about two men who disappeared 15 years ago after being picked up by a deputy sheriff in Florida. Legendary Watergate reporter Bob Woodward's new book says Donald Trump thought his remarks cleaning up his Charlottesville comments, good people on both sides, quote, was the biggest fucking mistake he'd ever made. Really, dude? That was his quote. Yeah, the president actually said that. And also, we've got a list of white supremacists who have been pushed out of the Trump administration. Why are they so comfortable there in the first place? Also, Lou Dobbs, he says, what in the world is wrong with people somehow believing that police brutality is an issue in America? Lou, wake the hell up! Nike also dropped her new Colin Kaepernick ad, and a black progressive woman in Massachusetts is on her way to Congress. She defeats a 10-term incumbent. Folks, it's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time. And it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now. Martin.
All right, folks, another day of grilling for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh on Capitol Hill. The big hot button issue today, how he would rule on Roe v. Wade. It, of course, is a major issue that he has to contend with. And there was lots of questioning from various senators. Now, one of the issues that we also saw today, you still had more protesters who were letting their feelings be known. And so that took place as well. And so before we get to Barbara Arnwine with the Transformative Justice Coalition, here is some of what was said at today's hearing.
You made reference. You're talking about the period of time that he was White House counsel.
Yep.
That material's available to everybody.
So that bit of the material about him that's marked committee confidential is now public and available? Is that what you're saying? If that's what the chairman say,
No.
we got a whole new series of questions.
No, not if it's committee confidential. But
So it's not available.
you have access to it.
Not so
But,
that
but
I
don't
can
forget, 80% of the material we've gotten from the library is on the website of the Judiciary Committee, so the public has access to it.
No,
Proceed.
I want Judge Kavanaugh to have access so that we can ask him these questions under oath and he can see them.
Nothing like two old white men just arguing in front of everybody else. Roe v. Wade was, of course, is a huge, huge issue. Many are concerned that Brett Kavanaugh is going to repeal that law, even though he has said no, it's precedent over and over and over again. He never really answered the question. He was doing a lot of butt dancing when he was questioned. So here's that exchange.
I said that it's settled as a precedent of the Supreme Court entitled to respect under principles of stare decisis. And one of the important things to keep in mind about Roe v. Wade is that it has been reaffirmed many times over the past 45 years, as you know. And most prominently, most importantly, reaffirmed in Planned Parenthood versus Casey in 1992.
So yesterday, we saw a number of people, 61 in fact, who were arrested for protesting in the hearing room. Well, today, more protesters were there. It wasn't as vocal as it was yesterday, but they still have made their presence felt.
Letting racism like this is like letting a loaded weapon lie around. Dissents against President Roosevelt's decision. Justice Jackson's...
Ask him to suspend.
Justice Jackson's concurrence.
Thank you. All right, folks, joining us right now is Barbara Arnwine. She's Executive Director of the Transformative Justice Coalition. Barbara, how you doing?
It's great to be here.
All right, so yesterday was not as crazy as today wasn't crazy as yesterday, but they started getting into very specific policy issues, and obviously Roe v. Wade was one. Senator Dianne Feinstein kept pushing Kavanaugh on that, and he kept talking about how it was a major decision, and the Supreme Court had affirmed it, and affirmed it several other times. But here's the reality. The reality is Donald Trump said he was going to appoint somebody who was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Federalist Society handed him that list of 25 judges. There is no way in hell Society was going to hand him a list knowing full well they could have 5 hardcore right-wing judges on the Supreme Court and he not be very clear in terms of where he stands on that case.
And remember, he is a last-minute addition to the list, and that's only because the Mueller investigation was beginning to close in on President Trump, and all of a sudden he gets elevated to the list because he wasn't on the original list. He gets elevated to the list because of his views about executive power and executive immunity and executive amnesty, all of these issues that are important. And I'm glad that the questioners today went in on him about Morrison versus Olson and what he believes about that case. They were correct to really grill
Okay, first of all,
him.
everybody at home don't know what the hell Morrison versus Olson is.
Well, basically,
all y'all lawyers do. People at home know what that means. So what is Morrison versus Olson?
It's basically saying that there is a responsibility of the president to be held accountable to the Constitution, to constitutional guarantees.
Well, even when he was jammed up on that, the whole issue of did he believe a president, if he was issued a subpoena, if it was possible, he wouldn't answer. He did all kind of butt dancing. I'm sitting there going, can you answer the question? It's not hard. His actions pretty much said that no, which is the craziest thing in the world, that somehow there's one person in America who does not have to abide by any criminal statutes.
And also, not only did he dodge on that, he also dodged on the issue of, as you said, on Roe versus Wade. He somehow forgot that he wrote this this opinion for the teenager who needed to have an abortion because of her circumstances.
So there was a teenager who was a legal immigrant who courts have said she could have an abortion.
Right.
He wrote she couldn't.
Right. And he also dissented on, one thing we've heard yesterday. Ben Sasse says something. I hope everybody was listening to Senator Sasse yesterday, because all of a sudden we heard that there's a 4th branch of government called the independent federal agencies, or federal agencies, period, and that they, quote, shouldn't be making law. And you heard that a lot today from Kavanaugh. He really has this viewpoint of the executive branch that is a very, very limited viewpoint because he thinks only Congress should make laws and that federal agencies shouldn't issue guidances, rules, regulations. He has a lot of problem about what we call federal law enforcement. So it's no doubt that's why he ruled the way he did in South Carolina versus United States, which is the voting rights case where he approved a really ugly voter ID law that South Carolina had come up with that we knew would exclude tens upon thousands of people from being able to vote. And he, wrote this opinion saying even though there was no evidence whatsoever, none of, quote, voter fraud, that was still sufficient justification for this ugly law.
Now, look, it's clear. I don't think there's any way he's not going to get confirmed unless something crazy all of a sudden comes out. But what's also interesting to me, and the last one I want to talk to you about, was his feelings on the issue of U.S. versus Nixon.
Yes.
Okay, same thing. More
Yes.
butt dancing.
Yes.
And they have a quote where he says, I think it was actually wrongly decided. And then he tried to say, well, no, that was really taken out of context and never really explained the context. And I'm sitting there going, is somebody going to let me know what the hell the context was? He essentially was laying the groundwork, again, that a president can do whatever a president wants to do. And essentially, he is above the law, which is why Donald Trump picked him out of everybody else on that sheet of paper.
Absolutely. And I think, also I do think people need to watch what Lay was going after today about the whole Manuel Miranda hacking of the senators and whether or not he was engaged in that illegal criminal activity. Right. I think we need to keep our eyes on that. That's part of those 100,000 withheld documents. Some of that is there. So we need more information. But I also think that people need to really look at this candidate for his criminal justice viewpoints otherwise. Now, he's got this whole thing about the president is so exempt. But when it comes to the average criminal defendant, he is horrid. He wants, to have widespread search and seizure. He believes in stop and frisk at the extremist, ranges. It's important for people to really look at this candidate comprehensively. And I say, Democrats, listen. At some point, they did you in on Merrick Garland.
Right.
At some point, they really have rigged this entire hearing. At some point, besides just being angry and saying things, what else you gonna do?
Well, first of all, I thought it was hilarious.
What else you gonna
do? See Ted Cruz actually talk about how Kavanaugh agreed with Merrick Garland in about 96% of his cases, and then he said that Garland agreed with Kavanaugh in almost all of his. I'm sitting there going, well, why in the hell did y'all block him?
Right.
If all of a sudden, he was trying to make the case that, well, Merrick Garland was this great guy and that you agree with him in so many different rulings. Oh, yeah, but you were one of the folks who blocked Garland from even getting a hearing. I'm like, come on, that's a massive hypocrite. Barbara, we appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, folks, tomorrow we'll be talking with Derek Johnson of the NAACP about their opposition to Brett Kavanaugh being on the Supreme Court. Let's talk about what happened, folks, with a major bank in America. 6 current and former employees of J.P. Morgan Chase had a $24 million victory today after they threatened a class action lawsuit that said systemic intentional race discrimination at Chase led to less lucrative assignments and lower pay for black financial advisors. Now, J.P. Morgan chose to settle rather than face a court battle. The settlement includes a $4.5 million fund to support anti-bias training and the recruitment and mentoring of black employees. All right, folks, let's talk about a huge victory in Massachusetts, where Ayanna Pressley beat Michael Capuano, a 10-term incumbent on the Democratic side. She will be the first person of color to ever represent the state of Massachusetts in Congress. With her victory, bottom line, y'all, she guaranteed to win in November. The number of members of the Congressional Black Caucus who are African-American will exceed 50. Already, the CBC is the largest caucus on the Democratic side. And so Presley, she wins. And so we can't wait to have her right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And here's the huge thing. I'm going to talk about this with our panel in just one second. By her winning, another progressive goes down. And this is why it's important, folks, that you're not scared to run against people who are longtime incumbents. And so, last night, so I'm on Twitter and I'm following this whole deal. and someone on her campaign posted this video, and this is when Presley found out that she had won.
Tracy?
Oh my God!
Yeah, somebody is.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
And again, a huge victory for Ayanna Presley. All right, folks, let's break this thing down with our panel. Joining me right now, of course, we have Scott Bolden. Always have the little Kappas in the house. Scott Bolden,
Thank you for having me back,
head of the
Roland.
D.C. Democratic Party. Glad to have him on the show. We also have Avis Jones DeWeaver. Avis, of course, she, of course, How Black Women Lead, and she's of course, a life coach for people who really need it. She should really take on Scott. Of course, we have Eugene Craig with the Eugene Craig organization as well. So I want to talk about the Presley win. That's a huge victory because, again, we saw this with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And then we saw the other races as well, where folks said, look, enough with this crap that somehow incumbents, you can't challenge them. They ran against them, and what's interesting about Presley, the Congressional Black Caucus PAC
Didn't endorse her.
supported Papiano over the black woman. Congressman John Lewis came into town, held a rally for
Right.
Papiano, and the sister is running, and now they got some explaining to do because she wins. They back the establishment loses.
Yeah, I mean, this is reminiscent of 2010. Before we went off air news, when I saw all the time that the progressive movement's going through right now, what we went through with the Tea Party, where it's not necessarily popping off the other side, but you're popping off weaker candidates or more establishment candidates within your own party and taking the party more left, more right.
Yeah, I think that the progressives have been winning, but it's been every race is different. We saw what happened in Maryland. We saw what happened in New York. Last night was a little different because Bernie Sanders got behind some of these progressive candidates and they won on the ground and with money. Now, in Massachusetts, she was a complete underdog, as you just described, and she won because she had a grassroots campaign, and this was a majority African-American Hispanic district that time had come, that her time had come, and we could not wait on Trump. It was a grassroots campaign that made the difference.
Well,
I don't think Bernie Sanders supported her either.
Well, but that's the point I want to make here, because people talk about, in terms just like Bernie Sanders, his role in Florida. The reality is you can have Bernie Sanders support you all you want to, but if you don't go precinct to precinct, if you're not going door to door, registering people and getting the turnout, you don't win, Avis. And that's what we're seeing. And so, and what this is reminding me of, again, this is called old school politics.
Absolutely. In fact, I think
It's
people
not about the airwaves.
Absolutely.
It's the ground.
And I also believe people are overinflating the importance of Bernie Sanders. I mean, people did not. We didn't have the result that we've had in Florida because of Bernie Sanders. We had that result because we had a good candidate who was out there doing what needed to be done to get those votes and to earn those votes. And in terms of what's happened with Ayanna Presley, what we're seeing now, honestly, is a rise in black women candidates across the country. We have a record number of black women running across the country. Many of them are looking really, really, very, very fortunate in terms of their potential in November. And so she is just one of a wave of new black women candidates that we will see coming to Washington and all across this country representing their constituents.
But it certainly doesn't help, though. It doesn't hurt to have Bernie Sanders' list, Bernie Sanders' fundraising campaign. If you look at the race in Maryland, for example, Ben Jealous, a great Kappa man, if I may say.
He's not going to win, though.
The thing is this, you got to get credit where credit's due. It's not Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders helped him lift his name, his voting list, as well as his fundraising mechanism.
But here's the piece, though. But here's what we're seeing.
Whether he wins or not.
But hold on. Here's what we're seeing. You're seeing groups like Collective PAC. Yeah. You're seeing Adrian Shropshire. You're seeing Latasha Brown. You're seeing DeWanna Watson. You're seeing these groups of African Americans who are early on at the outset endorsing candidates. putting their money behind them as well,
Right.
raising the money, giving them the level of attention that they need to jumpstart their campaign.
Absolutely.
And first of all, every little bit helps in a campaign,
Exactly.
no matter who's supporting you. But what we're seeing is on the ground, old school politics making, really determining how folks are able to put themselves in a position to win.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Collective PAC is playing an amazing role right now on the Democratic side. You know, they put $2 million, behind Gillum. They were behind Presley and a lot of other candidates. You know, I equate Collective PAC to the role that Freedom Works played in the Tea Party in 2010, 2012. I mean, it's that early money and that early support, and that gives a candidate credibility and build out that infrastructure.
But,
to
you know,
actually win.
And it's also, yeah, exactly. And it's
And
also
do
a
it very
message.
stealthy, by the way.
Absolutely, absolutely, very, very expertly. And they're providing cabinet training. It's just a very comprehensive level of support. But in addition to that, it's also a message that I believe these candidates are sending the broader Democratic Party to not be scared. Don't be scared. Go out there and say what needs to be said at a time like this. This is the last moment in which we need to have a Democratic Party that is weak, that is not willing to stand up and fight. And those candidates that are winning are the ones that are saying, I'm here to fight against this unprecedented challenge that we are facing.
But they're not all progressives that are winning. You have mainstream candidates that are winning. The Democratic
Okay, hold on,
Party is still at war with each other.
stop.
Stop what?
The progressive candidates are mainstream. Now, I think what you say,
that's
no,
arguable.
they are mainstream. No, here's
Every race is different.
no, follow me.
And they just
Okay.
started winning, trust me.
No,
They
follow
just
me,
started
follow
winning.
me
I
here.
think Ben Jealous is pretty
okay,
not
first of all, progressives have won for years, okay? So when I say by trying to say that they're not mainstream, they are mainstream. The difference is a Connor Lamb is a different type of district than an Ocasio-Cortez district.
Exactly.
Which is different. So it's all mainstream.
But it's not mainstream.
It is mainstream.
Wanting to have.
Is Maxine
college
Waters
education-
mainstream?
You don't have to yell at me if you disagree.
Well, because
Can I finish?
Scott, is
Can
Maxine
I
Waters
finish?
mainstream?
Maxine Waters mainstream because she's been there for 30 years.
No, because
No. And she
Maxine
has
Waters has been
progressive
running
views.
on,
And she-
her district is a progressive
Absolutely.
district, but she's
wanting
mainstream.
Universal health care, wanting colleges to be free for individuals.
A
Those are not
10,000% tax rate.
mainstream moderate Democrat principles.
If you
As
see the
moderate
polling
Democrats,
numbers, it shows it's
may
mainstream.
be, but I'm talking about candidates and elected officials have not embraced that until recently.
No.
And when
Here's
the
the piece.
progressives tried to run the
Why?
DNC several times in the last 2 or 3 years, they lost.
First of all,
And Bernie Sanders
first of all, they lost.
And so,
First of all, they lost because of the massive amount of corporate dollars that were driving the party.
and there was nothing illegal about that. Nothing
No,
appropriate
I didn't say there was
about
anything
that.
illegal about
so
it.
now
But-
they've learned to win in some spots, and that's
No,
great.
not
That's
learn
great.
to
But
win
the
in some
Democratic
spots.
Party is still at war.
Scott, they got
because
tired of
the
losing.
Progressives have got to show that they can win nationwide.
Here's my
They
point.
can win in
Here's
some states.
my
And
point.
God bless them.
The reason I'm going to push it back on the mainstream piece is because if we allow that becomes the narrative that somehow if you're progressive you're not mainstream. Yes, you are.
But
because here's the
problem
piece.
with being
The
progressive.
I can make our. Actually, I'm going to give
Here's
Scott
the problem.
a
Let me
tag
just-
team here.
let me
Because the Tea Party folks,
Ben
No,
Jealous,
hear
Ben
me.
it's
Jealous in
amazing that
Maryland.
the Tea Party folks were not mainstream.
Hold on
But
here.
became
I'm
mainstream.
say, I'll say this.
Got
I'll
that
say this.
right.
Scott actually does have a point. In Maryland, Ben Jealous is probably a progressive. Maryland has a 2-to-1 voter registration, Democrats, Republican. Governor Hogan is kicking Jealous's butt right now. Every ounce of polling is up almost 20 points. I mean, I think there's an argument to be made about progressivism and mainstream. When it comes
No,
to the
that's not
average
what it
voter.
is. That's
Let
not
me
what
tell
it
you
is.
where it counts.
Hold on,
Hold on,
one
let
second.
me
One
tell you
second.
where it
No, let me break it down. This is what it is. Larry Hogan is a
guy. Great governor.
Larry Hogan's a Republican, but Larry Hogan is governing as a moderate Republican. Let me hold up 2 Republicans in blue states. Larry Hogan in Maryland, Bruce Rauner in Illinois. 2 blue states, flat out, Democrats, 2-to-1 control.
They have no choice.
No,
They have no choice but
not
to
true.
govern like that.
Not true.
You want them to embrace Trump?
Scott, let me break it down for you. Let me teach you something. Larry Hogan governs in a moderate way.
He is back.
He signs legislation that Democrats also approve of. Bruce Rauner in a blue state fights Mike Madigan, fights Democrats, fights them, didn't sign a budget for almost 4 years, has destroyed it fiscally. Guess what? He's about to lose to a Democrat. The reason Hogan is up because even some Democrats said he supported this. You know what? It ain't bad. So Jealous has a much larger hill to climb than Pritzker does because the type of person is run. My point is, I don't want us to use mainstream media's language by somehow saying that you progressive, you not mainstream, because it sounds like you out of the mainstream when in fact you actually are there. But speaking of out of the mainstream,
There are not that many progressives.
I got you. Speaking of, first of all, there are lots of progressives. They just don't want to call themselves that.
Well,
speaking of out of the, yeah, we can deal with that. So let's talk about
Scott's
out of the mainstream. So yesterday, yes, Scott, it is my show. Yes. Alpha still run campus. All right, y'all. So yesterday we talked about Zena Bush. She's a woman. Okay, let's go to the video. This is a woman we showed her yesterday. She was a woman who was sitting behind, was on my iPad. Here we go to my iPad. She was the woman who was sitting behind Brett Kavanaugh. And so we played yesterday. We were joking with this here, where she was doing this with her arm. And they tried to say, oh, gosh, she wasn't doing that. That wasn't a racist symbol. That was some Fortran, whatever the heck, trolling stuff or whatever the heck. So her husband was a U.S. attorney down in Texas. Oh, my God. He jumped on Twitter. And here's some of his tweets. Let's pull tweets up. So he jumped on Twitter saying, my wife, she's not a racist. She's part Hispanic. She's also part Polish, Jewish, all this sort of stuff. And so he laid it all out there. But here's what the real deal is, okay? So people were going like, y'all must be crazy calling her racist. But see, here's the problem, y'all. See, the problem is so many bigots in the Trump administration, starting with numero uno, that they don't get any room to actually question that, because let's do a roll call. Got a few receipts. I'm going to show you some names, okay? So let's start with Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon, of course, who was the longtime guy running Breitbart, who said that it was the home of the alt-right, which we also call white supremacists. Steve Bannon, of course, has pushed white nationalism, pushed white ideology. That's what he has pushed. And so he served there, then he eventually got fired because he said some stuff about Ivanka and Jared, and that didn't go too well, okay? Sebastian Gorka. Remember when he was busted for wearing the hate symbols, the Nazi symbols? And same thing. He was run out of the administration. Darren Beatty, he was the guy, you might remember him as well. Darren Beatty, he was the one who was a speechwriter who appeared on a panel with white nationalists. He didn't even want to quit. He said, I'm staying. They're like, no, your ass about to go. Now pull this back up, y'all. Pull this back up. I ain't done. Come back to the list. Okay, pull the list up. I got to show y'all the rest. Okay, you got Carl Higbee. He made all kind of racist comments, and he was run out of his job once they uncovered that. Then you have Reverend Jamie Johnson, Ian Smith, Christine Bauserman, William Bradford. All these folks, they uncovered racist, sexist, homophobic, all kinds of stuff. So you got to ask yourself the question, why are bigots at home in the Trump administration? Pull the list back up, y'all. Don't take it down. Jeff Sessions, who's still there. Now we know how. Jeff Beauregard.
Get down.
The little wizard. We know how Beauregard feel about them black folks down in Alabama. And so I'm going to try to keep y'all in jail about as long as I possibly can. And so we know all about how Beauregard is positioned. And then let's go to Michael Flynn, all of his positions when it comes to he can't stand folks who are Muslim. Then you got Seema Verma. Then you got John K. Bush, and you got Steve Mnuchin, who also has an issue with one of the companies he was running where they didn't really want to do loans to black people. Because your president also kicked off his real estate career by not wanting black folks to live in his buildings. And so going back to our panel, the reason folks don't give them any margin for error is because Donald Trump has hired people, has appointed people to lifetime appointments on the federal bench who hold racist feelings, who align themselves with white nationalists. And then when you read the Bob Woodward book, where he said after he was forced to condemn white supremacists and neo-Nazis after Charlottesville, that was the worst speech he gave, and it was the worst thing he could have done. Now, Lord, That the worst speech ever, condemning white nationalists and neo-Nazis?
The thing is this, we know the president's a racist, but the thing is this, this wouldn't be the first time we've seen the I'm a, white racist rebrand. I mean, Rafael Edward Cruz, has rebranded himself as Ted. I'm gonna lock up all these, illegal immigrants, Cruz. I mean, it's not the first time we've seen this. It probably won't be the last time.
Who got here through Canada.
Who got here through Canada, And so, one more time, wouldn't be the first time that, I'm not saying that, I don't know Zena, I don't know if she's a racist or not. I do know that,
But
the thing is
the issue's not even really her.
But her husband decided to go to Twitter. You're an attorney, bro.
Here's the point, Avis. The point I'm making is this administration has provided aid and comfort and a place. We didn't even put on the list Stephen Miller.
Absolutely.
Okay, Stephen Miller, who Richard Spencer, white supremacist, said that Stephen Miller was his mentor at Duke University. This is an administration that has said to racist, white nationalists, and bigots, y'all have a place at the table.
Absolutely. They've rolled out the welcome mat. And with regards to Stephen Miller, I mean, he was pictured making white power symbols right in front of the presidential seal, okay? And so this is an administration that clearly, through everything that it does overtly and subvertly, with all of these sort of mimickings that they have, absolutely show who they are for. And it's not for people of color. We can see that by their actions. It's definitely not for women. It is specifically for a white male patriarchy that they are looking to sort of put all the full force of the federal government behind in everything that they do.
But the real reason that the Klansmen and the supremacists support this administration is if you were to compare the rhetoric of the Ku Klux Klan and the Nazi Party, our land, our blood, right? This is a country that doesn't look like us anymore, and we're going to take it back. All the rhetoric matches up well with the rhetoric you hear from Donald Trump. For example, Mexicans are criminals and rapists and killers. What does the Klan's book says? What does Breitbart say? And so when the rhetoric matches up, it shouldn't be surprising that you have white nationalists who support this administration because this administration supports white nationalism. But check the rhetoric.
The crazy thing is this. The crazy thing is this. When it came to the presidential vetting during the transition team, they were able to grab things like, simple articles that Michael wrote. But you have literally somebody like Carl Hibby who has hours of footage
that they
of just all type of wild stuff.
Not to all the folks who are watching. Michael Singleton, of course, you saw him numerous times on my previous show. Well, he got hired at a HUD. They walked him out the building when they discovered an article that he wrote criticizing Donald Trump.
The president should be moral.
No, let me explain something to y'all again. No, put the camera back on me. Let me explain something to y'all. Michael was sitting at his desk, and they walked in, they said, let me holler at you.
He's not lying.
Y'all,
he's not lying.
He had to get up immediately and walk out. They walked him, a security escort, out the building, walked the brother out, but they will let Stephen Miller and all the rest of these white folks out who are racist and bigots in administration stay in their jobs and give them more duties.
Well, you remember, this is a president who you had to pull out of him any sort of condemnation of David Duke. Okay, so if you want any other example of how extreme he is and who he surrounds himself with, then that exactly is it.
And we're going to take a break right now. When we come back, let's talk about extreme, y'all. First of all, we're going to deal with Colin Kaepernick. Nike has dropped this new ad that's an unbelievable ad. But Lou Dobbs, my former colleague at CNN, y'all, I really don't. I don't know when the lobotomy happened.
At CNN.
But Lou Dobbs, wait till we play this clip for y'all. I know. Please pray to the Lord. I got this video clip where Lou Dobbs basically says, "What's wrong with y'all? Like police brutality don't exist."
Oh my God.
Yeah, he said that. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered. Back in a moment.
I'm a fighter. Nobody has ever bought me or bossed me. Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm.
All right, y'all. So last night on Fox Business, y'all, Lou Dobbs was talking about the Colin Kaepernick story. Now, he can't stand these black folks kneeling, fighting police brutality, not against the flag, not against the national anthem. I swear they can't read or listen. But speaking of listening, Lou Dobbs actually let this come out of his mouth last night on national television.
The thing that is really at issue here, and the National Police Union pointed this out, This is Nike endorsing the Kaepernick message, which is that police brutality exists in wanton measure across this country. And it emphatically, and I happen to agree with the police union, emphatically does not. It is a disgrace to me that anyone would give that message credence. In social justice, it should start with truth. And unfortunately, that has never been part of Kaepernick's message, nor now that of Nike.
Where you gonna start? Where you gonna start?
Y'all, the network is called Fox Business. Lou was the one who started the CNN Business Network. Lou was supposed to be the money guy. Lou, let me help you out. The city of New York has literally spent upwards of $1 billion settling police brutality cases. The city of Chicago has spent more than $500 million settling police brutality cases. Lou, that was a black man who was arrested by the cops in a town in Michigan. The cops planted drugs in his car, beat his ass with the camera rolling. Dude sued them. They had to raise the taxes in this small town in Michigan to pay for the settlement. Do you know how many cases, Lou, from Los Angeles to Houston to Charlotte to St. Louis to New York to let's do Miami Gardens. Miami Gardens arrested one black dude by 200 times. And you're trying to tell me that police brutality somehow is a figment of our imagination? Lou, what happened to you? Y'all, this is the invasion of the body snatchers. I really believe somebody has come down from space, came to Earth, snatched the common sense that used to reside in the brain of Harvard-educated Lou Dobbs. Somebody who I debated a lot on CNN. I would go to his office. We would talk. You know what I think the problem is? He used that same damn orange makeup Donald Trump does. And that could be the problem. I think the orange makeup that Lou Dobbs is using somehow has seeped into his brain, and he somehow has lost his mind.
So I think it's a couple things here. You know, Fox Business is built to be essentially a spillover from Fox News. You know, if you look at Fox Business ratings, this show, you know, this digital, you know, in day two, literally has higher ratings than every single show.
No. Fox, they've actually, because they have embraced Donald Trump, their numbers have gone up big time and competing against CNBC. But what they've done, I don't care if you disagree with Kaepernick. Don't act like police brutality isn't a problem in America when it is costing cities millions every year.
I'm surprised he even acknowledged it, to be frank, because I am so tired of everyone feigning like they don't even understand why he's protesting.
And then act like he don't know.
Absolutely.
Lou, do you have Colin's number? I do. Have you ever texted Colin Kaepernick? I do. Have you ever called Colin Kaepernick? I have. In fact, we were just texting today. But I love these people like Lou Dobbs and like Jason Whitlock on Fox Sports 1 who never talk to these people, who never discuss any of these people saying this is what they think or don't think.
Yeah, but Roland, here's the white privilege piece. The National Police Force and Lou Dobbs and the majority of white America simply do not believe that police brutality is widespread. To accept that, they would have to accept that they are a flawed organization. They're not willing to do that. What they're willing to say is, yes, I can name you 50 times that happened, and there are 350 or 400 million people in America, and we have bad apples, right? The problem, if you're black or brown, though, versus white, is we can't afford in our communities to have any bad apples. You don't have a right to be a bad police officer and you blow it off because you say that's a bad apple, because hate speech and police brutality kills brown people and black people.
We got video.
But the issue is that the good apples don't deal with bad apples.
They are comfortable saying that. If you ask white people whether racism and police brutality is in their top 5 things they do on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't make the top 20. But if you ask somebody black and brown, racism and police brutality, where is that? It's usually in the top 3. They don't experience it, and so they find comfort in saying that doesn't happen based on their white privilege experience.
We have seen in Baltimore where they have planted drugs.
Right.
Wait a minute, on camera. Forgot the camera was on.
But
They
what
planted.
Lou is saying is that it's not prevalent.
Hold on.
He's wrong. But if you ask him, is it widespread, which he says, no, it isn't, the problem is he deeply believes that.
And here's the
that
piece.
it's not
Hold on.
because he doesn't experience.
And I'm going to show you why it's the case. When we were at CNN, I remember one of the conversations we had, we're in the green room. And Joe Madison was on the show. So we're standing there in the green room. And Joe Madison says to Lou Dobbs, Lou, you don't have the same conversation with my sons as you do.
Exactly.
And Lou goes, yes, I do. He said, no, you don't, Lou. He said, Lou, you don't have to tell your sons to put their hands on a steering wheel, on the dashboard, no sudden movements. He said, no, your sons get to yell, cuss, act the fool all you want to. He said, Lou, you can't tell me about cop interaction with you in the conversation you have with yours. He said, your conversation is not even remotely the same as the one that I have with my black sons.
Exactly.
And Lou had to concede, well, I guess you're right. Yeah, you are right.
Because in our communities, we have to call the police no matter what. We don't believe that the police are there to protect and serve. They're there to do something and sometimes cost us our life. Now, when white America calls the police, they call the police and they yell and scream or they can criticize, but they believe that he's officer friendly and there to protect and serve because that's what they are innately trained to think. Part of their white privilege.
The bigger thing is this.
They don't have that issue like we do.
The issue with police unions' argument about bad apples and bad actors is that when you have bad apples and bad actors, the quote-unquote good actors there with them don't do anything.
Right.
I mean, you've been to Baltimore. We literally 3 weeks ago had a situation where you had a police officer giving his best impression of Mayweather, and the other officer there with him sat there.
Yeah.
And they were black.
And they're black. They were black.
And not always about white and black.
Right.
It's all about blue. It's all about blue.
Absolutely.
That thin blue line. That's really what it's about. And it's just it's insidious.
And I also find it interesting that here's this business guy, and he specifically, as you pointed out, talked about his support of the police union stance. I bet you that is the only time you will ever hear him say anything positive about any union. Okay, exactly. And the only reason why he's aligned with them is because of this mythology that they push, that there is nothing wrong that the police ever does, and at the same time they are getting away literally with murder day after day.
And getting paid for it.
And what really kills me, what really
bring back that young boy who shot and killed.
And what really kills me, on these shows, is that they'll book guests who don't know nothing about the subject. And the Lou Dobbs show is called Affirmation TV.
It is.
So no.
That's all Fox Business though. That's literally the entire Fox Business Network, Affirmation TV.
Because y'all know. See, first of all, Fox will call Scott because he's a different kind of brother.
No,
so they'll call Scott.
He's a Catholic.
You know, I do battle on Fox and I do it well.
Tucker Carlson
don't say that.
loves to have Scott on.
No.
Laura Ingraham will call Scott.
Yes,
all the time. But y'all know they ain't gonna call Uncle Roro.
I urge them to call you all the time.
It ain't gonna, no.
I urge them to call you all the time.
Hold up.
You didn't get the message.
They called you. Y'all.
They called you.
Scott said, I urged them to call. Guess what? They must be calling Tyrone. So they ain't calling Roro. Because you know why? Tucker don't want this heat. Laura Ingraham, she don't want this heat.
And I give them
now,
both
y'all
heat,
know Sean Hannity don't want this heat.
No smoke.
And so I said, look, Fox, I am more than welcome. Remember, we used to be in the same building as y'all. I am more than welcome to come on any of y'all show, talk about any of these issues, and I will wear my most conservative suit. I even wear a tie with y'all. But you know I'm going to hashtag bring the funk. Well, y'all just know.
The next time I'm on, I'm going to urge them to call you again, Roland.
And they're going to be like,
okay,
Scott, you can put my phone number in their phone.
No, I've written it down and handed it over, and they say they're going to get to
you.
they
went. Hey, here, put a camera on me. This how they like.
We don't want no smoke.
They like, who is it? No, we ain't calling that. We ain't calling that one. We ain't calling that one.
Well, I tried, Roland. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they like, we ain't calling that one. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about something that Tyler Perry is doing, a huge, all right, so first of all, I'm going to get to that in a second. I want to go to the break right now, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about Tyler Perry, what he is doing, trying to bring attention to this case out of Florida, two men, black man, Latino men, been missing more than 15 years. And guess what? A former deputy sheriff is the key to the whole story. We'll deal with that. Also, Colin Kaepernick and Nike when we come back after this break. Roland Martin Unfiltered.
If people say your dreams are crazy, if they laugh at what you think you can do, good. Stay that way. Because what non-believers fail to understand is that calling a dream crazy is not an insult. It's a compliment. Don't try to be the fastest runner in your school or the fastest in the world. Be the fastest ever. Don't picture yourself wearing OBJ's jersey. Picture OBJ wearing yours. Don't settle for homecoming queen or linebacker. Do both. Lose 120 pounds and become an Iron Man after beating a brain tumor. Don't believe you have to be like anybody to be somebody. If you're born a refugee, don't let it stop you from playing soccer for the national team at age 16. Don't become the best basketball player on the planet. Be bigger than basketball. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. When they talk about the greatest team in the history of the sport, make sure it's your team. If you have only one hand, don't just watch football, play it at the highest level. And if you're a girl from Compton, don't just become a tennis player. Become the greatest athlete ever. Yeah, that's more like it. So don't ask if your dreams are crazy. Ask if they're crazy enough.
All right, folks, that was the new ad Nike dropped today. Of course, they announced yesterday that Colin Kaepernick is going to be the face of their 30th anniversary of the Just Do It campaign. But not only that, guess what? Nike is going to air that commercial during the first NFL game on tomorrow. Now, y'all know Jerry Jones going to be like, damn it. He going to be cussing, drinking some Johnny Walker, mad as all get out. Because the Nike, of course, they have the NFL uniform contract.
Right.
They re-upped it in March through 2028. Let's go with our panel. Donald Trump is hot because he mad at Nike. He mad at Nike. And then so then you got Clay Travis, this conservative sports dude, talking about, Nike, they lost $3 billion in market cap. Well, first of all, if you actually studied yesterday, all of the sports apparel companies' stock was down about at least from 1.5% to 3%. So what was the reason why their stock went down? The bottom line is nonsense. But of course, Nike stock rebounded today. That's what stocks do. They go up and they go down. Right. But what's interesting is that Nike, again, a major NFL partner, is rekindling the Kaepernick deal. The NFL is kind of like, man, we thought we had that Negro. Now y'all bringing it back.
Well, I mean, well,
go ahead.
Go right ahead.
I mean, the thing is this. I mean, there's no argument NFL can make for not, for Kaepernick not being assigned quarterback right now. I mean, when you have a trash quarterback in Baltimore, you got a trash quarterback in Buffalo. I mean, you got a trash quarterback in Miami.
Bears, Chicago.
I mean, you got Chicago got a trash quarterback. I mean, Phillip Rivers is on the dick. I mean, there are a lot of trash. I mean, the complete garbage, like quarterbacks in the NFL. There's no argument you can make. Not even as a backup, as a second string. And so, what Nike's showing is that, listen, they kept him signed from 2011 on. Kept him on the shelf. Waited for the right moment to pull the trigger and pop the bullet. And listen, I can't wait for the cap line to drop.
No, I think
go ahead. I'm gonna when it drop, I'm gonna hit my uncle Scott and my uncle Roland and say, listen, Christmas is coming up. These cap 17s.
No. Here's the deal. No, first of all, and just so y'all know, again, I mean, I wasn't fronting. I mean, I do talk to Colin Kaepernick, and so Nessa, who was his girlfriend, DJ out of New York. She's been wearing this I'm with Cap hashtag I'm with Cap jersey. It's a black jersey, number 7. Those are going to be for sale real soon. And so I've been telling him for the last 2 months, like, dude, what a jersey. Because here's the deal. I'm not wearing any Houston Texans gear. Y'all know how I feel about my Houston teams. But I'm not wearing any NFL gear as long as he's not in the NFL. And so I took all my Texans golf gear out my bag. No, I'm putting all this stuff in the box. I'm not wearing it. And so I said, Cap, get the jersey so brother can wear that every Sunday.
All right. Here's the deal, if I may, because there's a lot more going on here.
Actually, I was pointing at Avis, but go right ahead.
Avis, go right ahead.
Yeah, I know he your Kappa brother, but you just wanted to jump out there. Avis, go ahead.
Who you praise. Go right ahead, Avis.
No, but I'm
in your red dress.
That's right. But but it's really a very intense pink. Let's just get
that straight. She's an AK in case you just didn't get served. Go ahead, Avis.
So, what I love about what's going on with Nike is they were bold enough to embrace a controversial figure that is prime for this time. And I think that was a brilliant marketing move. In fact, I would argue that the Democrats could learn a little bit of something in terms of marketing from Nike. Not being afraid to stand up with someone who is right, who is for the moment, even if it's controversial, even if you know that it's going to turn off some people who maybe would have not embraced you anyway, if you know that you are also going to really play into your base. Let's get it real. The base of the Nike consumer is the black dollar. So it was a brilliant and black athletes.
Always has been.
So it was a brilliant business move in addition to being a socially conscious move. This is still a business and they are about making money, and this was a brilliant move in terms of
the timing
the reach
is really
of their
important. Now let's unpack it. First of all, let's not forget about the arbitration that's going on, whereby the arbitrator found that the case could go forward because there was enough information through discovery that was produced that he could find that there was collusion among the owners. That's incredible because the depositions of the owners had to reveal something.
Right.
Secondly, that ad you've run and they're going to run, right? The beauty of that ad is it talks about his principles, what he stands for, what he's lost without saying one word about the NFL.
But it's also
about
showing other individuals and saying, if you want something, go for it.
Right.
And so it's hard.
Got nothing to do with the
now,
national
if Donald
anthem
Trump
or
wants
anything
to talk
else.
about this here, he talked about the brother who's going to the NFL this year, who played for Florida, who didn't have a hand.
Right.
I mean, so no, it's a brilliant ad. And again, Nike has always been about in terms of thumbing their face at authority. And I'm telling you, I know the NFL desperately does not want this to be a subject. Of
course not.
Because there are a lot of black people who made it clear they are not watching NFL games. And they said, I'm not watching on Thursday, I'm not watching on Sunday. And I know they are cussing like, why did we re-sign that deal in March?
But watch Trump. Trump's tweet on Nike, who is a tenant in one of the buildings that he owns, he said, I respect them honoring the First Amendment. They have a First Amendment to do this, but you don't respect and honor Kaepernick, who's the subject of their ad. Unbelievable.
That means he wants that
the
check.
height of hypocrisy.
That's he wants that check. All right,
that's
y'all.
right.
All right, y'all. So let's talk about what's happening in Florida, of course. So Tyler Perry was watching this show on Discovery ID, and he saw this story about a case out of Florida where two men have been missing for more than 15 years. Felipe Santos and Terrence Williams were both last seen alive in the company of former Deputy Stephen Calkins. Now, Perry saw the case and said, wait a minute, something's going on here. So he offered $100,000. He offered $100,000 for information dealing with the case. Santos and Williams have never been found. In fact, the deputy has refused to even participate in the grand jury. He's no longer on the police force. Now, in Florida, a person is presumed dead after 5 years. And so what Tyler Perry did, he called up Ben Crump and said, I want you to file a civil lawsuit against this cop so we can get to the truth of what happened. Because here's the piece. This former deputy sheriff has refused to participate in the grand jury hearing, but he can't ignore testifying in a civil case. This morning, Tyler Perry was on Good Morning America. This is what he had to say.
You and so many others feel that these kinds of cases do not get the national attention that they so richly deserve. And you were brilliant in your press conference yesterday when you were talking about this is not a black and white issue. Can you just expound on that?
Yeah, well, just where we are in this country, it's just everything has become about race or party or separation. This is not a black or white issue. This is not a police versus us issue. This is about just justice. And what I was saying yesterday is just that I don't care who you are. You know, there are deputies, and I hate getting into black and white, but there are deputies down in Collier County who are white, who are just as interested in seeking justice as we are. Monica, who runs Q for missing persons, she's a white woman. She's just as interested in seeing justice as we are. And the thing about this is, during slavery, when slaves were trying to escape, there were white people that helped them. During the civil rights movement, there were white people that helped and marched alongside of us. So I just want us to get away from everything being black and white and come together and stand for what is wrong. And this is wrong. Stand against what is wrong. And this is wrong. This is injustice.
Folks, joining us right now is attorney Ben Crump. Ben, how you doing?
I'm good, Roland. How you doing, brother?
Glad to talk to you. We chatted this morning, and so I didn't even realize what Tyler was involved in this. A couple of days ago, we were texting back and forth, and he sent me a text, and he said, I'm down here in Florida. Man, I'm with Ben Crump. He said, we need some attention for this story. I said, not a problem. That's when I called you, put you on Tom Joyner this morning, now having you on Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is an unbelievable case. For the audience out there who didn't see the interview on Good Morning America, didn't hear on Tom Joyner, I mean, tell them about this officer, this former deputy sheriff, who has had no regard for the lives and the whereabouts of these two men who he was last seen with.
Absolutely. And Roland, is profound on many levels because this not only touches on the families of Marcel Williams, and it's also Felipe Santos and so many other black people who are missing, who nobody's covering. Tyler, when he and Marcel Williams called me, he said, you know, Ben, when there's a tragic killing, and rightfully so, like Trayvon or Michael Brown, everybody is giving it attention. But when one of our loved ones go missing, the press, mainstream media, nobody says a word, and these families are often all alone. And then he began to tell me about Marcel Williams' son, Terrence Williams, who was last seen in the custody of this then Collier County Sheriff's Deputy, Stephen Calkins. And he had so many inconsistencies in his story. At first he said he had never met Terrence Williams. The car was abandoned and he called it in. But then they had him on the communications saying, I have this background check I want on Terrence Williams, gave his birthday and his Social Security number. So if he had never met Terrence, how would he know his birthday and Social Security number? So it's those kind of inconsistencies. And the fact, even though he was fired, he was never charged and arrested. So he sleeps in his bed peacefully every night, while the Santos family and the Williams family get no sleep. And on top of all of that, you know, he comes up with this convenient excuse that he dropped them off at the Circle K gas station. They had surveillance on the Circle K at the time. He said they dropped them off on the video. They didn't see Terrence Williams 3 months earlier when Santos went missing. They didn't see him. So, Roland, none of it adds up. But the prosecutors find it hard to prosecute somebody for murder if there's no body. So when Tyler asked me, what could we do, Ben Crump, I came up and said, we could file a civil lawsuit. Now, there's no guarantee we'll get a criminal conviction, but we will get a verdict in the court of law to give these families the answers they so richly deserve. And even though, like you said, he didn't testify in the grand jury proceeding, we're going to subpoena him to give a deposition, and he has to come, or there's going to be a warrant out for his arrest for contempt of court. And he may take the Fifth Amendment, but we will have him on video trying to explain all these inconsistencies. And we've already built our case. We know that there's enough evidence to go to a jury and get a verdict for these families.
Got a question here from Scott Bolden.
Hey, Ben Crump.
Hey,
Scott Bolden
my
here.
Man.
You answered my question because I said we may never hear the truth from this officer or these officers because they would invoke the Fifth. But I do think that suing them across the board, as well as their departments, if the statute of limitations hasn't run, is the right way to go. That in many of these cases, civil justice works better than the criminal justice system. What do you think?
You're absolutely right, Scott. And as a great lawyer yourself, you know that there's no statute of limitation on an intentional act that leads to someone's murder. So that's why 14 years later we can bring them in court after the presumption of death had been confirmed. The other thing, Marcia Williams, this month has been great because, Roland, what she has done, she has helped get witnesses. You know, his car was out at the graveyard. That's where this Sergeant Calkins called it in, where we were able to find people, and I can't give away too much, that actually saw him independently of his testimony. So those people testimony can go to the jury, and Collier County is a little conservative, but as Tyler and I said, these white folks in this rich retirement village of Naples, Florida, they understand your child being taken away from you and you never get any answers. They can't even give them proper barriers because the bodies have never been found.
Got it. Need a quick question, quick answer from Avis Jones-DeWeaver. Avis?
Sure, Mr. Crump. So, you know, we've sort of established, obviously, he's been running all this time, and it's a high likelihood that he's not going to want to really relay anything very substantive. Is there anything that you can do to ensure to the families that whatever he says in that deposition, that at least that you will continue to push for the truth? Because I'm sure that you'll have to even dig even further than what he will specifically say.
Absolutely. I'm going to call people like Scott Bolden, and we're going to have a million questions for this one time that we get to sit this guy down.
To you too.
And when we get to sit him down, Scott and Roland, Avis, we're going to make sure that no question goes unasked, and regardless of his answer, we're going to supplement all the record with the evidence to put forward the notion of exactly what happened, put this puzzle together, and solve this murder mystery.
Ben Crump, first of all, we're going to give it up for Tyler also. He initially put up $100,000. He's now added another 100, so there he has 200,000 information leading to finding out what happened to these two men. And so we certainly appreciate it. Give our best to their families. Attorney Ben Crump, we appreciate it, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland. So many black people are missing, and we have to come back and talk about that, Roland.
Oh, no, absolutely. Well, that's one of the reasons why I created Roland Martin Unfiltered, so we can have our own place to share our stories. The reality is mainstream media ignores this. If you're a white woman, you come up missing, every single one of these networks will talk about it because, frankly, it's run by white executives. And when they see a white woman coming up missing, they think about their mother, their daughter, their niece, or their cousin. But when it's black, nobody gives a damn, and so that's why we have to have our own platform. So, Ben Crump, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, Al. God bless.
All right, folks. Tomorrow, I was going to do it today. I was going to roll some of the, you know, I'm going to just do this real quick. Give me the first page. So there have been a number of people who've already given to our Bring the Funk fan club to make this show possible. And so our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans to contribute a minimum of $50 each for us to raise money to help put this show on. Because here's the deal. If we have to rely solely on advertisers, then who's controlling the message? We want this to be as independent as possible, and I keep making this point. We must control our narrative, but also fund our own freedom. And so I want to give a shout-out to 3B Resources Group Public Relations, A&L International Group of Color LLC, Ada V. Brooks, A. Hubert Productions. Y'all can roll the list, please. Ainsley Reynolds, Aisha Cephas, Alan Dunkley, Atlantis Martin Lee, Albert Walker. Look at my niece giving money to the show. I pay her, so she actually gave my money right back, but it's all good. Albert Watkins, Alfonso Thomas, Allen Ventures. I thought we had their names. We're supposed to be scrolling them, folks. Okay, Alonzo Slade, Altamise Akiva, Alvin Harris, Amanda Rice, Anastasia Lee, my other niece, Andrea Dansby, Andrea Franklin, some of the names. And so what we're going to do is every day, I'm going to read names of people who've already given to our fan club. And so I want to give them a shout out. And so we have their names on our website. We're going to also put them on social media as well. And so if you want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And again, you can give any amount. And I'm going to have for you on Friday, I'll just give you a tidbit. There was a sister, 92 years old, out of New York, who sent a handwritten letter to my office in Chicago with a $500 check. Wow. She said, I mean, it's amazing what she wrote. And she said, why your voice matters. She says, and I want to make this show a success. And so we want to thank her and thank so many others. So again, go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Appreciate it. Eugene Craig, Avis Jones-DeWeaver, and yes, the Kappa down there, Scott Bolden.
If I write a check, sizable or small, will you give me a shout out? Is that how the
No,
rules
first
go?
of all, we don't take checks from you, Scott. We need cashier's check or cash, or it's gonna have to be via Square. I mean,
Anything
no.
positive about me and my money.
No.
No.
Actually, it's Erica's money.
Oh.
So that's there. See, he didn't want to go there. All right, y'all. Don't forget the restream of this show, 10 p.m., 2 a.m., 6 a.m., 10 a.m. And we want to see your comments as well. It has been a fabulous day. Thanks to our panel, all of our guests as well. Tomorrow, guess who's in the house? Omarosa.
Uh-oh.
I've got a few questions. That's tomorrow, right here. Roland Martin Unfiltered, where we keep it black and we keep it real. I got to go. Holla!